In this lesson, as promised, we'll be populating the sidebar of the chat application. Up top, we're going to show the name of the room the current user is in, and we're also going to show a list of all of the users in that room, and that list will automatically update as users come and go. Now, we've already done all of the heavy lifting in order to get this done. We're already tracking when users come and go, and inside of users.js, we already created a function that allows us to fetch a list of users by the room name. So all we really need to do is emit a new event from the server to the client when the room list changes. When's that going to happen? It's going to happen when someone joins, and down below, it's going to happen when someone leaves. So let's go ahead and actually knock that out. We're going to start right here. So we welcome the user. We then send a message saying the new user has joined. Then we're going to use io.to to send something to everyone in that room, including the new user. Right here, io.to user.room, and we are going to emit a new event. Now we could call this whatever we want to. I'm going to call it something like room data. We're going to send two pieces of data in an object. We are going to send a list of all of the users, and we're going to send the room name. So right here, let's do that. Room is going to come from user.room. Then down below, I could call users the property, and the value comes from get users in room, and we are going to provide the room name. So once again, user.room. So this is going to make sure that the client gets all of the necessary data, and we're going to do something similar down below when someone leaves. So right here, we're only ever adding users. Down below, let's go ahead and do just the opposite. So when someone disconnects and they were actually part of a room, we will send that message saying that the user has left, and we'll also use io.to to send something else to that room, emitting, once again, our room data event and providing the same set of data. So we have the room, user.room, and we have that user's property, which comes from get users in room, providing the room name. Perfect. So now, when users come and go, the client is getting notified, allowing it to keep an active list of those names. Let's go ahead and actually update things on the client. For the moment, all we're going to do is listen for this event and log it to the console. Once we're sure we have the correct data, we'll focus on rendering it to the screen. So inside of chat.js, we have onMessage, onLocationMessage, and just below that, I'll be adding the new call to socket.on. In this case, it is on the room data event, and we are going to get access to that data. Right here, I could destructure it, getting the room name and the user's list, and then down below, all I'm going to do is log that data out. So console.log room, followed by console.log users. Now let's go ahead and test this out in its current state to make sure we're at least getting the data. I'm going to save all of my files and head over to the browser. In the browser, what I'm going to do is open up the console for both of these browser windows using the keyboard shortcut for my OS. Once again, you can find that alongside of the menu option. It's sitting right here for me. And then what we're going to do is refresh both tabs. So right here, we are getting the new data, and what do we have? Well, first up, we have our welcome message, which is great. Then we have the name of the room, this one being JS, and this one being HTML. Then we have our array of users, which in this case just contains one user for each. Let's go ahead and have this second browser window join that JS room as well. So I'm going to leave the room I was in, go back to localhost 3000. I'll pick a new name. I'll go ahead and use Jess, and I'll have Jess join the JS room. Now I would expect to see my little notification saying that Jess has joined, and I'm also seeing updated data. Now I have an array of 2 users, and I would be able to use this data to re-render the sidebar. So let's go ahead and actually get that done. It's a two-step process. Step 1, create the template. Step 2, render the template. Over in chat.html, let's go ahead and knock that template out. So we have our main content, then we have the message template followed by the location template. Down below, we're going to go ahead and add a new one. So we set up our script tag, we set up our ID. I could call this one something like sidebar template, and I'll also set the type equal to text/HTML. Then inside of here, we'll work on creating that structure, and we're going to start off with the room name right here. That's going to go in an h2 header tag, and all we're going to do is provide it like so, and we'll pass this data in when we actually render the template shortly. I'm also going to set up a class for this one to style it. Right here, the class is room-title. Down below that, we'll go ahead and use an h3 to render some static text to the screen. Right here, I'm going to render users since we'll have the users list down below, and there's a class for this one as well. The class for this one is list title. Then after that, we actually provide the list. This is going to be in a UL element, which stands for unordered list. Right here, we are going to expand that since we'll be adding a bit of content inside of there, and we're also going to set up a class, the class being users. Now, in this case, what we want to do is look at an array. We have an array of objects, and for each object, we want to render the username property to the HTML output. To get that done, we use the following syntax. What we do is we start with 2 opening curly braces followed by 2 closing curly braces. Then it's the hash sign or pound symbol followed by the name of that array. So in this case, the name of the array is going to end up being users. Then we go ahead and close this off with the same thing, though it is /users. So this is the syntax for opening for the array and closing. Everything inside is going to happen for each element in that array, and we have access to the data for that object. So in this case, we have an array of objects with those properties. In this case, all we want to do is use the username property. So right here, we're going to create a list item using li, and we're going to put that username right inside. There's nothing more to it. Now, if we wanted to show other things for each user, we could add those inside of here as well alongside of our list item, but in this case, it's the only piece of information we need to render. So we have the sidebar template, we need to select it and render it. In chat.html, up top, we have our templates list. I'll create a new constant for this one, sidebar template. And once again, we're going to select it using document.querySelector, grabbing it by its ID. And I just called that the sidebar template. From there, grabbing its HTML using inner HTML. Now we can actually render it down below in the new event listener we set up. Right here, I can remove those console.log calls and start by generating my compiled HTML. Using mustache.render like we've done before. In this case, we're rendering the sidebar template, and we're rendering it with the following data. We have our room, and we have our users. Now from here, we have the HTML, and we can actually put it into the document where we want to show it. In our case, we've created a place for this. If you remember up top, our main content has this sidebar right here. All we're going to do is give this an ID so we can target it. I can give it an ID of sidebar, and now we're going to put the HTML right inside of there. So inside of chat.js, we will select that element, document.querySelector, selecting it by its ID sidebar, and rendering inside of it the HTML. So .inner HTML is going to equal the HTML we compiled up above. Now with this in place, we should be able to see the sidebar content. What I'm going to do is head over to the browser, making sure every single file is saved, and I'll go ahead and refresh a couple of these right here. Now I can see unclosed section users is showing up, and that is for my mustache template. So let's take a quick look at that. Over inside of chat.html, I see that I opened users right here and I closed it down below. The actual problem is that I forgot to provide that second closing curly brace. So mistakes do happen and they're perfectly normal. Right here, we're just gonna save our changes and try again. So from the browser, I'll go ahead and refresh both pages again, and right here we can see we have our data showing up. I have the chat room name for each, and then down below that, what do I have? I have the list of active users. Now in this case, it's Andrew and Jess, but what happens if Jess leaves? I'll go ahead and create a new tab to keep this window open. When I close this tab, I disconnect. I see that Jess is gone from the sidebar, and I also have my message saying Jess has left. So when we're tracking the users throughout their use of the chat app, it makes it really easy to work with that data. With just a few lines of code, we were able to get the list of users in a particular room back to the client so the client could render them. That's where we're going to stop for this one. There are still a few more things we want to knock out for the chat application. In the next lesson, what we're going to focus on is auto scrolling. So as we add more messages than what can fit on the screen, the behavior gets a little nasty. We're going to address that soon, so let's jump right in.